Today I'm going to take you to outer space. The first thing I'm going to do is take you to Mars. I have a special interest in Mars because my son works at Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, in Pasadena, California. So I extracted from YouTube this wonderful educational clip on how the Curiosity rover got to Mars. I can't improve on what they say, so let me show this clip to you so that you can get an understanding and education as we go together to Mars and see what's happening.
Our science laboratory's launch vehicle pushed the craft to 13,000 miles per hour, ready for its journey to Mars. The Mars Science Laboratory, or Curiosity rover, is a massive interplanetary payload, the largest ever delivered to the surface of a planet, and 5 times larger than any previous rover. The logistics of getting it not just to the surface of Mars, but to a very particular spot on the surface of Mars, boggle my mind. The calm of the first 8.5 months of this journey will end as the spacecraft enters the Martian atmosphere, still traveling at around 13,000 miles per hour. At that moment, the craft will lose contact with us. 7 minutes later, it will be going 0 miles per hour, either sitting peacefully on the surface of the planet, ready to begin its mission, or scattered across the landscape with no sign as to what went wrong. NASA scientists and engineers call this the 7 minutes of terror. As the craft enters the upper atmosphere and jets align it to the perfect entry vector, the friction of the atmosphere heats the heat shield up to 1600 degrees Celsius while slowing the craft down to a much more manageable 1,000 miles per hour. Still, though, faster than the speed of sound. But while the Martian atmosphere is certainly thick enough to burn up an improperly shielded spacecraft, it is not thick enough to slow it down to subsonic speeds. So that job is done by a parachute. The largest supersonic parachute ever designed, in fact, weighing only 100 pounds and yet capable of withstanding 6,500 pounds of force. But now I have for you some more scary news. Because the Martian atmosphere is so thin, the parachute isn't enough to achieve a safe landing speed, so you guessed it, a third stage is necessary: the powered descent. The parachute detaches and the falling craft is caught by retro-rockets which slow it further, jetting it away from the parachute so it doesn't get tangled up, and eliminating not just vertical but horizontal speed. The craft now uses radar and cameras not just to see how high it is, but to spot its landing area, so that it can hit the surface in a previously defined area that isn't just safe, it's also scientifically fascinating, at the base of a 6-kilometer high mountain. However, there remains one final problem. If it lowered itself all the way to the surface on rockets, the amount of dust kicked up in that process could permanently damage many of the instruments. So instead, the lander is lowered down on a 21-foot tether, a system engineers call the sky crane maneuver. After the wheels hit the ground, the rocket portion detaches, accelerates up, and then crashes at a safe distance. At this point, and only if all of those things go perfectly, the craft will send out a signal letting us know that it is safely on the planet's surface, and we can all let out a huge sigh of relief.
Now, if you're like me, you're going to wonder to yourself, why are they spending so much money on these missions? I mean, China's got a rover up there, Russia's got a rover up there. What's going on with us now having the 5th rover up there? I think 2 have gone kaput and 3 are still functioning. The reason why the Perseverance was sent, because they're curious if Mars ever had anything that could sustain life in the past, and if so, can they sustain human life in the future? So people are looking for a paradise, the Shangri-La, a lost paradise, a Garden of Eden, something where they can start all over. So now I'm going to take you to our space, not the Mars space, but the space of the Earth. And as you can see behind me, we're going to travel across the breadth of the world, our world. And we're looking at the beauty, the clouds, the Aurora Borealis in the northern hemisphere. It's beautiful. The whole ocean and the water and the mountains and the things that you're seeing, there's nothing like the beauty of the Earth from outer space. There is a problem though. As we get closer to the Earth, in fact, if we land on Earth, let's just imagine we were from another planet and we land on Earth, we'd be very disappointed very quickly on how we've turned on each other. Violence, crime of every kind, theft, all kinds of horrible things that the news depicts. I don't even want to talk about the things that we see depicted in the news on a regular basis. So in other words, the closer you examine the earth, the more we say, I've got to get out of here. I don't want to live on this earth. It's a horrible place to live. Now, if you have the attitude that you're not comfortable on the earth, actually, that is a good attitude. The Bible tells us in 1 John that we are to hate the world and all the things that are in this world. James tells us that if we love the world, we are enemies of God. Jesus tells us in John, if the world loves you, it hates me. In other words, I don't belong to the world, and therefore you don't belong to the world. And so what we're doing is we're really, as Christians, true Christians, we are looking for another world. A world beyond this world. And the good news is that world is coming. It's coming on a two-fold prong approach. The first one will be 1,000-year rule and reign with Christ upon this earth. People who study prophecy, they may not all agree on the details. They believe the earth is groaning and travailing and struggling for the coming of the Lord. And it could be very, very quickly, very soon, as we see things around us prophetically. I know other generations have said it, but with Israel in the land, the last major prophecy, and God calling the Jews back to Israel, He set the time clock, and we are living, I believe, in the last of the last days. So Jesus will come back, according to Revelation, around chapter 19. And it says that He will come and destroy all the wickedness of the land, and He will rule and reign for 1,000 years. So prong number one is the rule of Christ for 1,000 years, and the saints ruling with Him. That is something to look forward to. We will not recognize the earth as we see it now, or have seen it since Adam and Eve fell and introduced sin into the world. For about 6,000 to 7,000 years, we've never seen a beautiful earth, with the Lord ruling and reigning as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Out of the throne of David in Jerusalem, we will see a new earth. But that's not all. We long for a paradise that is sinless, spotless, pure. We would like to see a Garden of Eden. Could you imagine once again seeing animals roaming the earth? The lion and the lamb laying together, the beauty of His creation, a new heaven and a new earth. This is what we long for. And this is our desire that God has placed in us that love Him. We want to see it. Our Father in heaven wants to bring us a new heaven and a new earth. Peter talks about the elements of this world will all melt away. They will all implode. This world will be completely destroyed, and God will usher in a world where we will live in what we've called peace and harmony. We can't achieve it without Jesus, but at that day and age, those that have given their life to Him will get to rule and reign with not only Jesus, but the Heavenly Father. He will make Himself present in a new heaven and a new earth. That's what we need to long for and we need to hope for. God didn't put these things in the Bible just so He could give us a fairy tale. He put them there to encourage us. So when you're discouraged and it looks like all is horrible around us, take hope, look to the future, because that future is coming soon and it belongs to us. Would you give your life to Jesus to assure yourself that you will enter into that world and be a citizen of a new heaven and a new earth? It's waiting for you. Apart from Christ, you will never enter into those city gates that are depicted in Revelation around chapter 20, 21. The latter part of Revelation tells you of the city that I've just briefly described. Read it, get encouraged, and long for it. I leave you with this word to pause and ponder.